It's like 50 today.
Oh.
If they're not.
But I guess
Okay.
Yeah.
We haven't started.
I
don't know.
Beautiful. I'll do that today. Okay.
So, but as long as it's not broken, I feel better.
We'll call the meeting, PPW committee to order. First thing we need is approval of the prior committee meeting minutes. Supervisor Wild, second by Supervisor Frazier. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Recognizing me, Mr. Chairman.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hajos.
All right, for the first request, it's authorizing agreements with the town of Thurman, Lake Luzerne, Hague, and Horgan. That is actually going to change. This request is only going to authorize an agreement with the town of Lake Luzerne for the support for the snowmobile trail and maintenance of equipment. The other three towns opted not to do it, and that the county would take over those duties. So this is only going to be for the town of Lake Luzerne, not for Thurman, Hague, or Oregon.
Okay, would someone like to move this to the floor? Supervisor McGowan, do you have a second? Supervisor Molino, any discussion? Supervisor Hogan?
So, does the amount change for Luzerne?
The amount does not change. The amount will remain the same.
Okay, any other discussion? Ready for the question? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay.
I'll turn it over for the next one.
Next one is a request. It's an annual request between Warren County and the town of Bolton. We do a support of $20,000.
Superintendent Ajos.
I just want to add on to this, is I was speaking with our county attorney on this, and as opposed to doing a termination date of contract at the end of the year, we'd just like to renew this annually, so we wouldn't have to bring this back to committee. It would just be an automatic renewal every year for us.
Okay, did you want to move that, Supervisor McGowan?
Yeah, I'll move that.
Thank you. Supervisor Frazier on the second. Any discussion? Supervisor Hogan?
How many people visit Up Yonda every year? I know I'm putting you on the spot, I'm sorry.
Close to 15,000.
And when was the last time that amount was changed or upped or?
This is actually a gift. It's a trust that has been earmarked for Up Yonda, and we can't change it. It was in the will.
Thank you.
That may change, Mr. Chairman, thank you, that may change my question, but this is not out of our budget, this is a trust, okay? So I was going to say, maybe in the future, we have to cut some expenses, and it's inappropriate.
Actually, this is from the town of Bolton.
This is from the town themselves.
This is what the town gives us every year.
Oh,
I
the town
think it
gives
comes
this?
to the town through a trust though, right? No. Then I looked at the wrong
This is right from your
Okay.
general,
Money that
Well-
we budget and provide to Up Yonda through the town budget.
So, it's probably, why don't we have an inflation clause in here? It's bold.
okay, we have this on the floor. Okay, any further discussion? Thank you, Town of Bolton, for the 20,000.
You're welcome, you're welcome. Without
I'm ready to call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
The next, we have intent to fill the position of the hatchery aide due to retirement.
Supervisor Wild? Supervisor Loeb on the second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Turn the next portion over to Mr. Hajo regarding the railroad. I have photos here with the storm damage. I've started in the north. I've skipped one section between approximately Mill Creek and the Glen, but the rest of the railroad I've done. There's some significant damage in the north, up by North Creek. So I've got some pictures here that I can send around, and Ed Downing and myself are currently working on what it will take to restore the tracks and the cost associated with it. Most of it's just water damage.
So as most of you know, the declaration came through from, I think we're going to be covered under FEMA now. I think they reached the state threshold. I believe that's what Amy had sent out an email to everyone the other day. Right now, we're just material alone for the track. We're somewhere, just shy of probably $150,000 just for material alone. That doesn't include a contractor coming in with their equipment. It's specialized to do the work on this track to fill in these. So it could be upwards of probably $500,000 for the track to repair these washout areas.
Supervisor Wild, you looked like you were going to ask a question.
I have one in mind, but not right now, thank you.
Okay. Sure. Okay. Supervisor McGowan.
I hate to say it, but since we really don't know what we're doing with the railroad, what happens if we do nothing? If it doesn't get fixed?
It's impossible. You can't run traffic with it.
Like
There's suspended
trains?
Anything.
We're looking maybe possibly down the road, for the abandonment of the track. I don't know. With things up in the air, I'm just wondering if, $500,000 is a lot of money to put into something that down the road we abandon.
Just, again, that $500,000, this is part of the storm damage. FEMA, I'm 99% sure that they'll cover this cost. We'll pay for the cost up front, but FEMA said that they will cover the cost of the storm damage.
But it's somebody's money. You know what I'm saying? It's still somebody's money. And I'm just wondering, I was just asking the questions, what happens if, how long do we have to make a decision of what we have to do with the track or what's going on? So, I don't know. Just asking.
You want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. The washouts that we've had, and I missed the beginning of the conversation, but I don't know how far down we're at. I think the last I knew we had 5, right? Down to, was that down past Riparius?
No, it's above.
So it's all above Riparius at this point.
Or north along River Road.
Yeah, we have other uses. So abandonment only applies to freight. Doesn't mean we're just going to walk away from the tracks and never use it again. If the rail line is abandoned, could become a trail. Could be still used for rail bikes if there's been talk in the past of the rail bikes wanting to run south instead of north. And it's just not safe right now for anything to pass over those tracks. It's still our asset, and that's where we're coming from in terms of fixing the storm damage. It's a safety issue.
Thanks. Like I said, I was just wondering, if we had any time, not that it is an asset, I don't want to look away, but then on the other hand, too, I hate to throw money at something that, we're going to eventually tear out.
And the thing about a washout is if you don't fix it, it'll get worse.
Amen. Okay.
Supervisor Wild.
Thank you. So I'm just curious, we have to do this before we get reimbursement? We have to pay for this?
That's the way FEMA works.
And
You
we're
have
99% sure.
to document all your costs and you submit for the reimbursement.
Right. So I guess I'm in favor of that. But I would like to talk before we go too far about the abandonment, what we're going to do with the rail line.
Supervisor Bramer.
I absolutely agree. We should be talking about this before we start putting dollars into repairing the damage, which I think we should do, at least from the basis of let's get the foundation back in place. Although I also think we should be thinking about whether or not this is an area where washout is going to continue again as we have more storm events. So is someone looking at that, like maybe from a more holistic standpoint, let's maybe move that track location? No? No. Because, really,
Superintendent Hajos.
we should be realistic about the fact that there are going to be more storm events like this. And what is the point of just putting it down in the exact same spot? And maybe we don't need to have the same grade or angle or all that stuff for a freight railroad when it's not going to be used for freight.
Yeah, we're not going to move the track at all. The track's going to remain where it is, but I can tell you that even with some of the other washouts that we've had, like, I'll give you an example. These areas did not wash out in the 2011 storm, which is probably worse than this one. So it's different areas each time. But what we're doing, even on our road project right now, is, let's say I had a 2-foot pipe that clogged up that washed out my road. I ended up putting in a 3-foot pipe, or I upsized the pipes to take that amount of water. You can't predict for 500-year storms. We don't design for 500-year storms. We design for 50-year storms, period. That's just what we've always done. So we take it upon ourselves to say, okay, 2-foot pipe, it got, clogged up fairly quick, washed out track or washed out the road, let's upsize the pipe. I usually try to pull in soil and water to take a look at the watershed areas to determine, if that amount of water lets go, do we have the right size pipe? I think, in fact, when we went out with them with the state last week, took a look at all the storm damage, Bob Bombard had given the indication, like, I think it's the All Road up in The Hague, that they're talking about upsizing that pipe because it just can't handle that kind of 500-year storm. So.
That is great. Though just went out for that inventory grant, the grant to do inventory of all of our gray infrastructure, which would include the railroad and resiliency actions that we can take. And so I just hope that we don't ignore the possibility of something bigger than just upsizing culverts, especially if we want to look at this corridor being something other than just an empty freight corridor. And one more point. I mean, if we're going forward and we're spending money, I mean, maybe we don't spend money putting rails back down. Because
Rails are, yeah.
See the pictures?
I haven't.
Okay, we'll look at the pictures first.
Superintendent Hajo?
The last thing I want to say is,
Yeah,
to go back to your first thing of moving the tracks, it's very difficult to move the tracks for the simple fact that we only have a 99-foot right-of-way. I'm not going to start blazing trails in the Adirondacks to put in tracks somewhere else.
Supervisor Frazier?
Oh, no,
Oh,
I haven't.
Supervisor McGowan?
Yeah, I'm looking at the pictures. How many different spots are we talking?
5 or 6.
That-
Yeah, they're all right in a row, and then there's one separate one with a whole bank, about 30 foot. That's a little more to the south.
All right, so each one of those are a different section then, all right. Because I was trying to count the stones on the wood.
The rest of the
Right.
track's been fine.
Just a half a mil for that, eh?
That's the contractors.
So I'd also like to thank the committee that I set up, the negotiating team that worked several meetings with, the respondent to our RFP, and, unfortunately they withdrew. They are not furthering their negotiations with us. So we do not have any proposals ahead of us at this time. But the work that they did, we really owe them a lot of thanks to sit through those meetings and try to work out the best deal for Warren County. So I just wanted to say thank you. Supervisor Hogan?
Is now the time to bring up a feasibility study for this corridor? I brought up feasibility study. Is now the time to look at a feasibility study for this corridor? I don't think we're any more decided on what we're doing with it than we were a year ago.
I think our county administrator can speak to this.
Yeah, so the abandonment proceeding is still ongoing with the Tahowas line, and the state of New York, DEC, through the Attorney General's office, is now working with Saratoga North Creek Railway on a trail use permit for that portion of the line, with the intention being that the abandonment will be staved off, the corridor will be preserved, and whoever the trail sponsor is going to be, maybe the state of New York, maybe not, that's, I believe, all still to be worked out, would work with the owner of the corridor, which would be Saratoga North Creek, on that trail use. From what I know, and this is coming from a few different sources, but from what I know about the effort to run freight on that line, the Tahawas line, it doesn't look like it's likely to happen. It looks like, if I had to put some money on it, I would say that trail use program is going to work out on the Tahawas line. That leaves us in a position of, it's always been, Paul Mitchell was the freight customer that was going to make freight viable. If there's no freight coming out of that mine, there's not going to be a freight usage for our line. That puts us in a position of, if there is going to be no viable freight, do we go forward and do we do an abandonment proceeding of our own on our line, which would free us up, our staff, from maintaining this as a FRA rail line capable of hauling freight. It will eliminate some costs that we have in doing that, and it'll also allow us, if we chose, to move forward with a passenger rail. Abandonment's only for freight. You could still have passenger rail on an abandoned line, and we could move forward with a trail if that's what this board wanted to do. We could have it be a snowmobile corridor. Basically, taking that step in supporting abandonment and moving forward on that for our 40 miles would take the FRA off our backs and allow us to determine what we want to do with that corridor going forward. So in terms of the feasibility study, to get back to the initial question, I think that's being done for us by virtue of the abandonment proceeding of the Tahawas line. It looks very unlikely that that's going to end up saying, yes, we have to run freight on this line.
Supervisor Garrity?
Yeah, can I suggest, though, that our committee meet with Essex and Hamilton County one time just to make sure all our cards are on the table, just so we know what they're thinking about the thing?
Sure.
Get whoever the players are for the two counties, invite them down, and let's just let them know what we're thinking, and if that's what we're thinking, so there's no guessing anymore. If there's not going to be freight, it makes a big difference.
Sure. Supervisor Wild?
Can I just be reminded what our annual maintenance cost is to maintain this line, not for freight, but for passenger service? So it's a totally different rating, but we need to clean up, any kind of issues with washouts. We need to maintain all the switching or the devices that can control traffic, and we also have to make sure we clean off the tracks when there's blowdowns and the like. So if I'm not mistaken, it was like $600,000 annual to maintain this?
It was $500,000.
Close. Okay.
And that was to maintain it. Doesn't matter whether it's passenger or freight. It's to maintain it for either or was that cost.
So my question is the viability of $500,000 annual just to maintain this is what we'd have to charge some operator to run passenger service.
Probably higher.
All right, so I guess the point I'm trying to make is I don't think it's economically viable to do anything else but a trail.
The 2020 budget really is taxes, and it's very, very minimal.
Right.
It's not a budget to support rail operations. If we wanted to go in that direction, we would have to fix that. I think we've already gone in that direction. We spent last year with a very intense RFP process to try to, and we made a really good effort to try to get a freight operation, or in the absence of freight, a passenger operation, and nothing worked out. So, if it was up to me, I would say we ought to consider looking into abandonment, and I think probably a trail use makes the most sense at this point.
And in follow-up, can we partner with the state with what they're doing with Saratoga and North Creek? But I'm assuming they're probably going to rip up rails.
I don't know if you can make that assumption, because taking up rails is going to be an environmental remediation project.
Exactly.
You could pave over rails to make a trail. But if we're going to move in the direction of abandonment and doing a trail, we should absolutely partner up with the state.
Superintendent Hayes.
Ryan's correct. We don't have to rip up the rails. There's work to be done on the bridges and things like that because they're open deck bridges. But there's other trails that they just pave over the existing tracks and leave them in place. You may see some value in the steel that's in the rail, but then that value will be chewed up fairly quickly by the ties that you'll have to remediate. So,
Supervisor Bramer?
I wanted to come back to Andrea's point. I agree with Kevin that we should meet with our other county partners. I'm not sure about what you're saying there with the money being lost from the steel due to remediation. We've looked at, there are people who are out there looking at this and talking about it, and there could be money available. But aside from all of that, the questions are still out there. Even if we don't do freight, maybe tourist trains don't work, but other places they have gone in and they've studied the entire line and they've said, okay, maybe out of North Creek we do like a little tourist train that just runs back and forth like a mile, and then we do rail bikes this way, and then we do a trail here. We can't just make this up out of, going willy-nilly. We need to look at this in a holistic way and come up with a plan. If that's not called a feasibility study, maybe it's called a master plan for the railroad corridor. Other places have done this, other counties have done this that are similar size. We don't need to recreate the wheel. We just need to go in a systematic fashion. If it had been my way, we would have started that process 2 years ago, just looking at how we can move forward. Now we need to start really looking at it.
Supervisor Hogan and McGowan.
It's exactly with an eye to partnering with the state, why I'm asking if we should start the process of some sort of study of what the best possible use of this corridor is, because they're going to want to see us moving in a direction of making a plan. So maybe I used the wrong term in feasibility study, but I think we need to think about what, we need to engage in a formal process of having somebody look at this corridor and tell us what our best, most elevated use is.
I think I took your question to mean, would we have a study to see whether freight is still the...
Let's stop beating that dead horse.
I misunderstood your question.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes, one of the things I haven't heard, what are the conditions of the Sanford Ridge line? Or Sanford Lake. What?
We don't own it.
No, we don't own it, but what is the condition if there were to be any freight? They haven't moved in years.
There's trees growing in it.
Oh, okay, so...
Hold on, everybody. I'm going to let Superintendent Hajos respond to Claudia, because he's got a comment.
Claudia.
I do know about damage on the...
I was going to add, and I'll let you
Okay.
There is significant damage on portions of the Sanford Lake line from this storm damage as well. Claudia, I'm not saying lost money. The steel that's on the rail right now, we've kind of in the past, probably about 7 or 8 years ago, looked at if we were to rip up all the tracks for the 40 miles, what we'd get, about $4 million. The remediation of all the ties would be in the 10 to 20, $15 million. So that's what I'm saying. It's not a wash. You're not gaining anything from it. That's why I said it's easier just to pave over the track. So if you have other information, please provide it to me. But we've kind of looked at that cost already, what it would be to rip up rail.
Lift up the rail and pave over the... If I may interject that...
Let me when we're done here, I'll let you speak at proper time. Supervisor Wild.
Just a quick one. If I'm not mistaken, there were some grants available for this kind of planning? Did we mention that a while ago?
It didn't come out, and we went into rail negotiations.
So what do we think it's going to cost to do a plan like this?
I can check DEC's website and see what they have for grants right now, and see what the cost would be to do a feasibility study.
Supervisor Chairman Conover.
We've been involved in a process which I think has concluded that there's no interest in acquiring our line or operating our line as a railroad. That's why we went through this process. It took a little longer because we had one expression of interest that frankly none of us anticipated, that he actually sat in that chair and said, I want to buy your line, right? And so the state negotiated, they sent down to the company and basically came up with zero. In my opinion, the first step needs to be an application to the STB to move the rail corridor from its present status to the abandonment status that's in alignment with the state of New York, which is a rail-to-trail. And I think just a few minutes of Ryan telling you what that status is would be very helpful to you, because it might explain maybe why even the state is assuming that position up there. And that the sooner we do that, the better, because it relates to a lot of different things going forward in terms of what we might want to think about, what we might want to plan, etc. But I think moving the STB out of the picture, so to speak, and moving ourselves into a different position, as long as this line is under their jurisdiction, which it is, we're limited. So I think I would ask Mr. Chairman, with the consensus of the committee, if you think Ryan should speak to that for a few minutes.
Sure.
Yes, in not having the STB involved, it does not forestall the possibility of having a passenger rail. It opens up the possibility of doing a rail trail. It gives us freedom to decide what we think is best. It would dovetail with doing a feasibility study if that's what we want to do. And it would certainly be fertile ground for discussions with the state of New York on what, if any, partnering role they'd like to have.
If I may add, it sends a clear message to all parties, in terms of where we are and where we're heading. And I think that's very, very important that we do just that. Remember, in terms of the line within the three counties, the only public checkbook that's open is ours.
Supervisor Wild.
So I'd like to have a motion to pursue the STB abandonment.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second it.
You want to repeat your motion for Supervisor Hogan, please?
Oh,
I couldn't hear you.
I'd like to pursue the STB abandonment for our land.
It was seconded by Supervisor Diamond. Any discussion? Okay, we're ready for the question. I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Supervisor Garrity and Supervisor Merlino opposed.
Only because I think we should meet with the other counties first. That's the only reason why I oppose it. I think there should be open dialogue with Essex and Hamilton.
Supervisor Merlino?
I agree with Mr. Garrity, but you should also get Corinth involved in it, because it kind of blocks them off also.
Supervisor Lowe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Along that line, although we voted majority to pursue the abandonment, it would be appropriate to talk to our neighboring counties.
Yep.
This is what we want to do. Make sure everybody's keep good blood between us all.
I agree. That was brought up earlier in the discussion, and
Right.
we will
So I'm
follow
just
up.
agreeing with.
I'll give Dick Lucia a call today, and we'll reach out to the other counties as well.
Okay, any? Supervisor McGowan?
We can always, pull back if this discussion, doesn't really go the way that we all want. But I mean, for right now, as long as, because this is going to take a while to do, and then the state has to approve it, correct?
State STB, it's a process within the STB, Surface Transportation Board, which it takes time. We don't even have a board
STB
meeting.
doing up north now?
STB is doing it up north on the,
So
we've got a case before them right now on the Sanford Lake line, the Tawas line, but there is no case, no action for abandonment for Warren County, and we don't even have a board meeting until December, so there's time to facilitate these meetings that the committee has asked for. There's time to react, and there's also work that our attorney's office would be doing in preparing for that action that would take some time.
Yeah.
So there's time. This isn't done today.
Well, and we would wait until the December board meeting for the Board of Supervisors to actually approve directing us to go and do this. So hopefully between now and then, we'll have enough time to have meetings with the state, meetings with our fellow governments. We'll be in a better position.
I feel comfortable, knowing that we have a little time too, but I really think that I would like to start at the same time, so it's one of those catch-22s, I guess. But we're moving forward.
Okay. Supervisor Wild?
I'm sorry, just another question. Would it be wise to have a resolution to allow Kevin to apply for any grants? Because it seems like we always have to have a resolution to apply for grants, right? That if you found something that would be applicable to the planning stage, to just let him do it?
I'm agreeable to that, but I just say give me the opportunity to look up what's out there right now. I just told Andrea that I kind of real quickly pulled up kind of Rails to Trails in New York, and there's the Transportation of Alternative program, which is the TAP program. I don't know if there's any funding left in that, so I just give me the opportunity to look up something first, see if something's there.
It's a question of what the committee would like to approve. I mean, we have DPW applies in the course of business, applies for grants all the time. That rule of coming to the committee first is, we do it where it makes sense, where we have the ability to have that input. If you don't want that input and you want Kevin just to get on it, we could do it that way too.
Why waste time? We've wasted enough time. So I guess I'd like to raise a motion that we authorize Kevin and his staff to apply for grants that might be appropriate for us to evaluate the long-term plan for the rail line.
With the condition that we come back to the Board of Supervisors for approval to accept the money.
Of course.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Call the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Excuse me, Kevin?
Opposed, so we have our meeting.
Kevin is opposed?
I oppose it.
Kevin opposed, okay. Superintendent Ajos.
I have one last rail discussion. As most of you know, if you've been there, at Thurman Station we have a caboose. The caboose was, I'll let Tim talk to it, we bought
It from the suites, and when it was in Reparius for $50,000. It had an ice cream stand in it, soda machine, so it was operational. Then we picked it up, we moved it down Saratoga North Creek, put a septic, power, repainted it, got it all ready, and then did
never
nothing with
used
it.
So
I
Cynthia
got,
has a buyer.
well, I got an email from a guy named Ben Reynolds. I'll read it to you. It says, I was wondering if you knew who owned the caboose concession and stand down at the train station. Would it be the county or does a private rail company own that? If the county owns it, who would I contact about it if it would be something they would sell? He got back, I told him I talked to Kevin. He got back and asked if I did, and then he emailed me 3 times, so this person is interested. So I need to give him an answer on who, if they're willing to sell it, who does he talk to?
Julie, I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, we did put out an RFP to sell that several years ago. I want to say maybe back in 2009. So we would have to do the same thing again. And you can just give me his contact information and we can reach out directly if the committee chose to do that.
Well, it's just sat there for years and years and years and it's done absolutely nothing. So I don't know why it would. It's
I
Thurman.
think it would have to be declared.
Nothing ever happened to it.
Well, we have to declare surplus first, don't we?
Wasn't it declared?
Does anybody want it?
Well, apparently this Ben guy does.
And does Andrew want it?
They want it.
You'd have to ask Julie on that, whether,
That
no.
was
Other Creek wants it?
other ones.
So what's the pleasure of the committee on this?
You got somebody interested on loan?
We have to declare it surplus.
I'll declare it surplus.
I'll second it.
Okay, we'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And then,
Well, just let this guy know.
would somebody like to make a motion to put an RFP out for purchasing? We don't need that? Okay. Okay, anything else before the railroad?
For the railroad, no.
Okay, we'll move on to your next item. I just want to make sure.
Okay. The last item I have, I just enclosed the wreath making flyer for Up Yonda. Every year, this program's gotten bigger and bigger, so this year we listened, and we offered 3 more right through the month of December, the 1st, 6th, and 7th. Last year, we had over 200 participants, and she's expecting more than that this year. So if you'd like to make a wreath, sign up. That's all I have.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good job.
Okay, we'll move into the Public Works portion of our meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the...
Actually, hold on, I did forget, I wanted to extend an opportunity for Mr. Austin. Mr. Austin? Did you want, now's the time I was going to let you speak.
Okay, good. Well, let me start with the last thing. I'm Kurt Austin, and, well, I should say I started an effort to turn some of this corridor into a bike trail 10 years ago, in 2009. And I was 58 years old at that time, and today I'm 68, 10 years later, and I think you've given me a bit of a birthday present in your vote to pursue abandonment.
Happy birthday.
So thank you
Happy
very much.
birthday.
Now, another 10 years, I'll be 78. So I think my main message here is hurry up. Hurry up. I agree with what Mr. Conover gave as an overview of the situation, and I think that's the way to go. I sense it's the way you plan to go. A small point is, I was part of a group that looked into some of the detailed questions over the conversion to a rail trail. We looked into a few things in great detail, and I looked into the salvage value of the rail. I talked to some salvage operators, salvage people directly, and the communication I got was they will pick up the ties, and they'll charge you for the ties if they're no good. The good ones, though, they'll give you some pretty good money for. Now, the condition of the ties, I'm not sure of. It would require a very detailed assessment. I don't think there are a lot of good ones. But still, I think the numbers worked out that the net salvage value would be about $2 million. And that means the ties and the rails would all be gone. And by the way, as soon as you do that and you level it out a little bit, it becomes a trail immediately. It's good enough to walk on, snowmobiles, mountain bikes. So you can have a trail and get an income of $2 million. You'd probably have to spend on some things, railings and whatnot. But I think I've heard a variety of things regarding the ties. They're used, they're creosote treated. People are afraid of them. Sometimes it's part of a fear campaign to reduce the likelihood that tracks are ripped up. There's some very strong rail supporters that absolutely spread the misinformation about ties. And as far as abandonment go, I think everyone understands it, but it is a permissive thing. Once you apply for abandonment and you're allowed to, it doesn't mean you have to do it, but it's just something that may you to do it. So I don't think there's much of a negative to applying, so it's not a big risk. Oh, and finally, on the sense of the caboose, I think you've forgotten that the caboose, while it never got much use when the trains were running through, if it became a bike trail, the caboose would get a lot of use. Everybody on a bicycle likes to stop for ice cream, and that would be a very popular destination on this future rail trail. And maybe the last thing I should say is make sure everyone understands that this would, we're all familiar with the bikeway. Now, it's a wonderful thing, the bikeway.
But on a 0 to 10 scale of rail trails, it would get a 3. It has some problems. You're kicked off on the road. It's hilly. It's not not very long. Now, the rail trail they're talking about up between Lake Placid and Tupper Lake, that'll be very nice, 34 miles long. I think that would get a 7 in the scale I have in my head. But the trail we're talking about here, if it's really fully developed, 90 miles between Saratoga Springs, which is a big deal place, right? Up to Hawes, which is a remarkably wilderness place. But that 90 miles, that's a stunning trail. That would get a 10. That's a level 10, world-class scale trail. So I'm not sure everyone appreciates that who doesn't ride rail trails often. I've ridden a few. Now, by the way, the person who's probably ridden more rail trails and knows more about them than anybody in this room, where'd he go? Oh, there he is, Tom Randall. Probably inappropriate for a journalist to speak, but you like them, right?
Oh yeah, I've been all over the Northeast.
All right, so
Extremely popular, and the businesses along the corridors are packed with people and have lines out the door, and these little towns that used to be desolate.
okay, well, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Sorry I had to cut you off there in the committee. Okay, Superintendent Ajos.
All right, in facilities earlier, and I know most of you were here for facilities, we had 2 requests on the facilities agenda, which Julie pointed out this morning that I actually had them on the wrong agenda. They were to go to DPW. One was a request for new contract for electronic recycling services, and the other one was a new contract for municipal paper recycling, and these are for the towns. The bids for the electronic recycling came in last Thursday, and the tap sheet, actually Julie, I think the tap sheet was included in the facilities committee meeting. We haven't actually awarded it to anyone yet. Julie had a couple questions to the proposed low bidder. Once she has those questions answered, then we would award it to that one. As far as the municipal paper recycling, that one comes in on Thursday. Again, these were not on the DPW agenda. They were on the facilities committee agenda earlier.
So we're not going to take any action, or what are we?
No,
we are. Okay. Julie?
Yeah, I just want to note that I did get answers from what would be the new contractor. I wanted to make sure that they fully understood the scope of the specs. She confirmed via email that she does. They're ready to meet all of the requirements. The only thing I'm waiting on at this point is that I'm requiring them to do the site visit so they know exactly what they're getting into if they come into the business before. So I would say if we go forward, we can make it contingent upon completion of the site visits, which he plans to do this week.
Is that for all electronics?
Yeah,
Are they buying or paying?
you would pay. But the pricing has gone down for the computers, or the monitors and the TVs. So it actually may turn out better for you guys. Because that is a substantial amount of pickups they do is the TVs and the monitors. So it's going, what would be, Evolution proposed 41 cents for those items, and ELA is 21.5 cents, which they were charging you 25 cents before. So it's gone from 25 down to 21.5 cents.
Supervisor Loeb?
Yes, the units, 21 cents per pound.
Per pound.
Thank you.
Okay, so would someone like to move this contingent upon the required site visit? Supervisor Molino, and seconded by Supervisor McGowan. Any discussion? Supervisor Hogan?
The price went down, but we can't charge. They are still going up.
You can charge, it just can't be counted toward the manufacturer's goal for recycling. So, but nobody proposed a rebate anyway, so it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. They were giving you a rebate before for some of the other electronics, but nobody's proposed that.
So who's in charge now?
Yes, that was on them, Andrew, not on.
Right,
That was for
right.
them, correct.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Call the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
That was for both of them. That was just on.
Electronics.
Second.
I think paper actually gets open some of that time.
Oh, okay.
So we want to-
Yeah, we do that.
Okay. Supervisor Bramer?
I would like to know what is happening with the electronics and the paper. You know, what the other thing is.
Recycle electronics.
I know the electronics, they get basically torn apart and recycled based on what the component parts are. So the plastics get recycled, and then any hazardous materials they have to comply with the requirements. Paper recycling is getting baled up, and they put it on the open market. They sell it on the open market.
Okay, while we're on the paper bid, that gets open tomorrow, and we would need a resolution to award that to the lowest responsible,
Or the highest, if anybody proposes.
for the highest, right?
Most responsible.
Most responsive bidder.
Correct.
Need a resolution for that?
Need somebody to move that.
I'll start that.
Supervisor McGowan, do we have a second? Supervisor Frazier, any discussion? Call the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
All right, back onto the DBW agenda. The first request is on page 3A and 3B, and this is a request to transfer for road projects. Again, this is because salaries and benefits aren't included in the road projects.
Supervisor Dickinson, seconded by Supervisor McGowan. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Next one is on page 4 of the agenda, which is a request to transfer for overtime and part-time salaries, and this is cover the cost of some overtime call-outs for traffic, group that had to go out and set up a detour, and for the rabies clinic that's held at the shop.
Moved by Supervisor Dickinson, seconded by Supervisor Wild. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
The next agenda is for a new contract, and this is for on-call electrical services. This is just a term agreement that we use in case we need an electrician, and the tab sheet is included in the package.
I'll move it.
Supervisor Garrity, seconded by Supervisor Dickinson. Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
All right, the next, I guess I could do one at a time. The next one on page 7, 12, and 13, a request for a grant agreement for the Jomsberg bridges. It's also an increase to capital project for H393, and it's a new contract with the consultant for that federal aid project.
I'll move 7, 12, 13.
Moved by Supervisor Garrity, seconded by Supervisor Loeb. Discussion?
Mr. Chairman, this is an ongoing process. I had to actually clarify it. We did the first part at our last committee meeting. We went to the full board for another part. This is a third part. We'll be looking at these same things the next full board meeting. In fact, if anybody's going to be here in 2029, you'll probably be closing it out right about then. So I question, could we move 7 to 42?
Touch on that a little bit. You could move them all at one time. They're all the same thing. There's little different money moves for each one of the capital projects. They're minor if you look at them, and we're just listing the funding in each one of them from federal aid and DOT.
I'll amend my motion to do 7 through 42 if it's permissible.
Are we okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. The second was done by, Mr. Lowe. Okay. Okay, we're ready for the question. I'll call it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
That's running too long.
Saved us a half hour.
Now we're at number 48.
I read them all. Yeah, I just...
Next item on the agenda on page 48 is to amend the budget And this is just to take the money to transfer into those federal aid projects.
Supervisor Garrity, seconded by Supervisor Hogan. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
And the last item I have on the agenda, on page 49, would be to authorize the chairman to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Warrensburg, and this would be for the operation and maintenance for the new county sewer. And this would be in a form approved by the county attorney. And I think the county attorney and the town have already worked out the details.
We changed that to ratify.
Ratify the actions of the chairman.
Okay, it was moved by Supervisor Wild. Do we have a second? Supervisor Molino. Any discussion? Supervisor Hogan?
Cornell
Yeah.
Cooperative Extension will be part of this, is part of that agreement as well.
Okay, we're ready for the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
We had no referral or pending items for the DPW committee. Under information for discussion and review, a couple different things. The first would be the update on the Halloween storm. As I had said earlier, we are going to receive federal or FEMA aid for this now. So Rob Lynch sent me a text this morning for this committee that we would establish a new capital project. So I'm going to ask for a request to establish a new capital project, H398, for 2019 storm damage. And I believe, based on my discussion with him, that it will be funded with serial bonds.
Supervisor Wild, seconded by Supervisor McGowan. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, carried.
Next item I have under here is back in, I believe it was June, maybe May, I came to committee and we looked at applying for a build grant. There was $900 million available for these build grants. They were 100% basically federally funded. It would have been no cost to the county. So we applied for one for the town of Jomsberg to cover Main Street from 28 on one end to 28 on the other end. And this would have included road work, infrastructure, sewer, storm drainage. We just got the message from the feds that we were denied. It was a $22.5 million grant. Actually, nobody in New York State got awarded this bill grant. It went to other states. So for the Main Street project that we had kind of postponed, we'll be back to doing that Main Street project next year.
Sorry, Andrea.
We tried.
It was a dream.
Okay, is there anything else from the committee? Supervisor? Hold on, I was going to ask about public. Is there anybody there in the audience that would like to speak?
Real quick, we always partner with Soil and Water to do projects with them, and with the town of Queensbury. The town of Queensbury had an issue with their entrance to Pineview Cemetery, and Soil and Water got involved and got them some money for some pipes, and I just have a picture of the work that we just completed out there for the Pineview Cemetery.
Okay, Supervisor McGowan.
You know, it's funny, I was going actually down the Northway, and I saw these pipes coming up, and I said, geez, I wonder if they're going down at Queensbury Cemetery, and when I got back home, there they were on the side of the road. I'm like, interesting. Yeah, there was a problem, so even the store next door had to redo theirs. Now, were they responsible for theirs?
They are.
And then we worked with the town of Queensbury on the cemetery. Thank you.
We assisted the gentleman down the way with it. We helped him out with sizing pipes and such.
Motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second? Supervisor Loeb, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, carried. Adjourned.